year was 1989, and the Heisei era was underway. With it would come new milestones and, more importantly, a willingness by Toei to take Super Sentai to places it had yet to go. So in this 11th season, as it was known in 1989, prior to the retroactive inclusion of Zyuranger and Jacka, we see all the previous Super Sentai teams from Battle Fever J on down joining this team to give them the proper send-off to their season. And this is the first time this had ever happened before, that we see more than 2 Super Sentai teams together all at once, and this was done in a TV episode, not a movie. Kosuko Sentai Turboranger is a series about 5 high school students that become involved in a conflict between humanity, fairies, and the Boma tribes. A conflict that goes back 20,000 years. After the fairy race helped the humans defeat the Boma, they used their magic to seal them away, but now in modern day, the magical seal is weakened due to destruction and pollution. The Boma tribes are finally able to break the seal and escape. As children, the 5 students had acquired the flames of the spirits while passing through the forest of fallen fairies. Because of this, they can hear the voice of Ceylon, the last of the fairies. With the help of Ceylon's magic, a scientist named Dr. Dazai is able to make special suits for the 5 youths. Now equipped to take on the Boma tribes, they transform into High-Speed Squadron Turboranger. In typical Toei fashion, initially this series was going to be called Gekiso Sentai Car Ranger, which is not a name that they would use until a few years later. And when they would finally use the Gekiso Sentai Car Ranger name, that series, in a stroke of irony, was a parody to Turboranger. In Turboranger, we also get the first instance of there not being the traditional roll call after transformation. Instead, the Rangers would say their name prior to their transformation. We also see the innovation of the base being able to transform and combine with the 2 mecha. And another thing to note about Turboranger is that this was obviously Toei's attempt to cash in on the craze that was going on in Japan, the mini 4-wheel drive craze, which was these little 1/32 scaled vehicles that were remoteless and battery powered. Turboranger would also be the series to make combination or jumping off the shoulder attacks a standard in future seasons. This was something that had not been highlighted since the days of Ninja Captor. 1 year later, Chikyu Sentai Fiveman would take the stage. The story begins in 1970 on the planet Sidon. A scientist, Dr. Hoshikawa, is looking for a way to develop a green environment for this barren planet, capable of sustaining plant life. Just as he succeeds, the Silver Imperial Army Zone attacks, and in the midst of the chaos, he is separated from his family. His 5 children are taken back to Earth by Arthur G6, his trusty support robot. Arthur G6 raises the children, and 20 years later the 5 have become school teachers. But they have also been training and developing technology needed to defend the Earth, specifically by an attack from their old enemies, the Zone Empire. That day finally comes, and the Hoshikawa siblings are ready, as they become the Earth Squadron Fiveman. Fiveman gave us the first all-sibling team, and because of this, I think that's why they considered the name Chikyu Sentai Brotherman. Another name that was considered for the series was Chikyu Sentai Vectorman, and we do see remnants of both of these in Fiveman, with Super 5 Robo's combination attacks and his finishers, the Brother Joint and Super Vector Punch. Unfortunately, Chikyu Sentai Fiveman would not be well received, and would cast doubt on the future of the Super Sentai series. The following years, Chojin Sentai Jetman would prove to be the opposite. With the advent of the Birdonic Wave technology developed by Skyforce, superhuman abilities could now be realized. 5 members of Skyforce's elite are chosen to be exposed to the Birdonic Waves. Ryutendo becomes the first and only Skyforce member to undergo the process, when suddenly, Skyforce's Earthship is attacked by the Dimensional War Party Vyra. Ryu's lover is killed in the attack, and the remaining 4 Birdonic Waves strike civilians on Earth. Ryu is then tasked with finding them and forming the team that will stop the Vyram invaders, Birdman Squadron Jetman. So this really shouldn't come off as a surprise. The series was originally going to be called Superman Squadron Birdman, and it was themed after the 1972 anime classic Kagaku Ninja Tai Gatchaman, or Science Ninja Team Gatchaman, or Battle of the Planets if you prefer. And this series, one could argue, was the one that saved Super Sentai, because initially upon production, this was considered to be the last Super Sentai show that Toei was going to produce. And this was largely due to the previous year's Chikyu Sentai Fiveman's poor reception. So they went big for this series. They brought in Tokusatsu legend Kaita Mamiya as director/producer for this series, and they changed the writing pretty substantially. One of the things that was going to be added to the show was a love triangle at the behest of Mr. Takeyuki Suzuki, who was a producer for Toei, who had also worked on an anime series called Tosho Daimos, in which there was also a love triangle. So he kind of drew from that as inspiration to add into Jetman. And in Jetman, we also see that initially the team is not formed. It's a gradual process that happens with the team forming. The team members do not refer to each other necessarily by designation or color. When they're transformed, there was a lot of episodes where they wouldn't even transform to fight the enemy. There was infighting amongst the villains themselves, the Vyram. There was a lot of contention in this series, a lot of rivalries, which made it unique. It was very dramatic. It was around this time that Haim Saban would once again revisit the idea of adapting Super Sentai for an American audience.
And I don't know if this is true or urban legend, but the way it's been told to me is that he thought it was a great idea and wanted to license it, and the president of Toei wasn't so sure that Americans would be able to deal with this. And so Hayam said, you know why it's going to happen? And he stood up and he sang the theme in the restaurant to Jetman out loud in front of him. And this guy said, and this is the president of Toei told me this, is that he thought that, maybe this guy is just about crazy enough to pull this off.
Jetman would also feature the debut of Yuta Mochizuki as Neo Jetman 1 and Hideki Fujiwara as Dan, both of whom would return in starring roles for the next season, Kuryo Sentai Zyuranger, the series which would also be the harbinger of what we in America would come to know as Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.